Hi, I'm Doug Draper with Acme Distribution and the Denver Transportation Club, and I'm pleased to present our series, Supply Chain and Logistics, The Storytellers. The series is brought to you by CAP Logistics. CAP Logistics are experts offering you customized transportation solutions for every need. So please visit caplogistics.com today. And speaking of today, we have a great show and a tremendous storyteller. We're going to talk a little bit about Omnichannel and what I would say stories from the endless aisle. So what does Omnichannel mean, and kind of how the parcel industry has really evolved and what that means to the end consumer. So our guest today is Bob Malley. He's the managing director of Pierbridge out in the Boston area. So Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. So we always like to learn a little bit about our guests before we jump into our topic. So feel free to let the audience know a little bit about yourself, maybe some background, and a little bit what Pierbridge does.
All right. Yeah. Well, I've been in the business around 25 years, the transportation management software business. I started out life as an attorney and was selling shipping systems as a way to fund my way through law school. And during that period, we developed software back in the early 90s that enabled companies to automate UPS, FedEx, U.S. postal shipping. We built that up, and we were acquired by Kiwo in the late 90s. I left there and started Pierbridge, which is the same kind of software, same kind of functions, but aimed at medium to large size retailers, manufacturers, and distributors. And what we do is help them reduce costs, streamline shipping processes, and ensure on-time delivery for their customers.
Excellent.
And we're now part of the WiseTech Global Group, and we're looking to deliver the same kind of solutions worldwide.
Excellent. Good deal. Well, let's just kind of jump into it here. I know there's lots of buzzwords around logistics and acronyms and stuff, and one that pops up a lot nowadays with changing buying habits of consumers is omnichannel. There's a few other words that we'll probably jump into that we can get some more definitions on, but maybe we start with what does that mean? What does omnichannel mean? And then additionally take a perspective of kind of what the supply chain around omnichannel looked like in the 80s and 90s. So maybe we'll start with there.
Okay. Yeah, omnichannel really refers to the ability of, I'm going to say mostly retailers, to be able to take orders from a number of different channels, sales channels. So they are able to take orders from their website, from catalogs, from phones, from the people visiting their stores, to marketplaces that they sell through like Amazon, and then the ability to fulfill those orders from multiple inventory sources, ship from stores, ship from suppliers, ship to stores. So for example, a consumer can buy from a catalog and yet pick up in a store or a FedEx store, or they can walk into a store, maybe order a size that doesn't exist, but they can still take that order and have it shipped from a supplier or from another store. So the endless aisle you had referred to go ahead.
No, please. That was my next question, is helping define what endless aisle means.
Yeah, the endless aisle really refers to the ability for retailers to fulfill pretty much any order for products that they want to provide, but they don't necessarily have to take it into inventory. They can sell things that still exist in manufacturing or their suppliers' inventory. So that's pretty much the model that Amazon has been built on, in that they don't hold a lot of they hold a lot of inventory, but I would say half of the items that they sell come from or get shipped directly from suppliers. So their cost of sales in terms of inventory, their cost of inventory is they able to manage it at a reasonable level.
Sure.
So the endless aisle is just that. They can sell anything even though it's not in their own physical aisle.
Yeah. It's a great term. So let's talk about how the supply chain used to look. You hear hub and spoke, which is another buzz term, but technology is able to bridge what you just described, where there's really no possession of a product per se that you can order online. So maybe take a step back and kind of how did that look when somebody ordered something, whether it's online or from a catalog back in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah, and back in those days, the supply chain was more, I would say, serialized. It was more like a hub spoke model
Hmm.
where items would be consolidated from the manufacturer. They would be line hauled by freight out to a distributor. The distributor would then, probably still line haul items to the retailer and a distribution center. And then those distribution centers would have maybe smaller trucks and deliver them to stores, and then customers would come to the stores and pick up items and drive home in their cars.
Yeah.
So it was very much, operating that kind of supply chain. You really had to be pretty good at forecasting because otherwise you're tying your money up in inventory. So the new model is more, the omni-channel model is more like a network where retailers, are building out a network of suppliers and inventory sources. And the object of their game is to ship from inventory sources that are closest to their consumers.
Hmm.
So if you think of, most shipping costs are based on distance traveled, the distance that the carrier has to travel. But because in e-commerce, customers expect free shipping, it's incumbent upon the retailer to make sure that their cost of shipping is as low as possible.
Hmm.
So that's where, in addition to the endless aisle and limiting, the amount of inventory they have to carry, they can now ship from inventory sources that are closest to the customers. Even Amazon has built out over 140 fulfillment centers because they're trying to get closer to their customers as well.
Right. Yeah.
And probably the net effect of that, you were seeing a trend from freight. More freight is being broken up into more frequent, smaller shipments direct to consumers instead of to distribution centers and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, the origin source. I was at an e-commerce summit a couple of weeks ago, and you may order a size medium. You're in San Diego. You may order a size medium, and if that shirt is in a retail outlet in L.A., they could literally walk in the back room, take the shirt off the rack, box it up, and send it to you. So it's coming from L.A. to San Diego versus a centralized D.C. in the Midwest or something. That's kind of what the omni-channel, that would be an example of that. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah, it is. I had the experience where I walked into a Verizon store. They didn't have the phone. This was about 5 years ago. It didn't have the phones that I wanted, the phone that I wanted,
Hmm.
but they knew it was going to be coming in. They just had no visibility into where it was. Whereas now, increasingly, retailers know when it's going to come in. They can actually take the order while it's still in transit and make arrangements for it to be shipped direct to the consumer.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you made mention of the free shipping and the expectation that doesn't matter what it is or what size it is. If I don't get free shipping in 2 days, the cart abandonment, I think, is through the roof right now, and the Amazon and the changing consumer expectations are making that faster and faster and faster. So I totally understand. So let me switch over to the transportation piece specifically, right? So you have so much parcel and larger products, and like I said, everybody's expecting. I want to order a jungle gym online, and I want it in 2 days at no cost. The strain on the delivery network is just increasingly growing, and there's only so many ways to deliver freight. So, talk about some of those transportation modes that are changing based on the consumer buying habits with wanting so much product delivered to them online.
Yeah, well, you think of the traditional categories of delivery systems, and those categories are kind of blurring.
Hmm.
You used to have LTL that only delivered, freight skid loads of material, and almost never to the final mile. Parcel, you have couriers, you have crowdsourced delivery services like Deliv. You have bikes. You also have ocean carriers that are making like Maersk, who's saying, well, we want to move inland. We want to deliver to the last mile as well. So actually the largest LTL carrier in the United States is FedEx. So and now you have freight carriers that are doing white glove delivery of appliances and furniture, because millennials are more inclined to buy things sight unseen, even heavy, gym equipment and the like. So everybody's scrambling. Almost all modes are scrambling to get into the last mile business. And you're right. That's partially because the parcel carriers are maxed out, particularly during holiday rush. You remember 2015 when FedEx wasn't and UPS weren't able to complete all their deliveries on time before UPS. So there was a real pressure. It created a vacuum where there were more carriers coming into the market, which has made it really difficult in many ways for retailers and manufacturers and suppliers to manage the supply chain, the delivery through the supply chain, just because there are so many choices today.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a perfect lead into the next question, which is about technology and kind of what's out there to help manage it, because you just said there's a very diverse delivery options, right? You could have this carrier in this market and this carrier in that market, and this is a larger shipment going here. So that's great. They're finding ways to reduce the final mile, but you have to have a seamless visibility tool. So talk a little bit about some of the technologies that are out there to allow visibility for the customer as well as the shipper, so they know where stuff is and who's delivering it.
Yeah, so what our software does, among other things, one of the markets that we're very active in is retail ship from store.
Okay.
So if you think about what our technology had to do, let's say even 5 years ago, we had to be able to support shipments for the national carriers and probably the regional carriers. So UPS, FedEx, all the name brands for parcel that you could think of, plus some of the regionals like OnTrack, LSO, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But as more retailers are trying to ship from store and ship different things from stores like furniture and food and so forth, we have had to expand our portfolio of carriers that we support within the system. So now we support many hundreds of local carriers that can pick up. They normally would not have. They don't have the technology, but they participate in freight networks or carrier networks that enable them to provide rates, provide proof of deliveries, to book shipments, to handle returns. So I would say the biggest technology trend we're seeing is the need to support many more types of carriers and do it in a way that is seamless to the retailer.
Right. And is that kind of organic through larger companies, or is that third parties that are bringing that type of software to the table and selling it as software as service? How is that technology being created?
Yeah, it really runs the gamut of our developing the software internally so that we can calculate rates for a courier. Mm-hmm. But increasingly, it's coming from their systems where they have a web presence, where they're able to connect to our platform and expose their rates and booking mechanisms.
And when you say their rates, you're talking about the retailer in this example, is that right?
Okay. The courier is able to expose their rates, deliver a label, and book a shipment from their website, from their web services that are integrated into our platform.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So the other thing that is arising are what I'll call courier or local carrier networks. So these are networks that have been built to help couriers automate their business, and they're plugging into our platform. So with one plugin, we get a whole network of different carriers that can now make their services available to retailers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Talk about the hardware on the street. So I'm big on examples. So I'm a crowdsourced delivery guy, right? So I'm kind of like Uber delivery. And I have your T-shirt that I'm delivering, and I walk up to your front porch and I make that delivery. Talk a little bit about, like, what am I pushing? Is it an app on my phone to validate that it's been delivered? Or, because some of these deliveries aren't necessarily a super regional courier type of network. It could literally be you and I doing a little side business on the weekends. What type of technology is out there to empower the final delivery if it's an independent type of person? What's being
Right.
Talk about that.
So when I was talking about the courier networks, what I was really referring to was these are companies like eCourier that have developed a network that allowed their customers, who are couriers,
Mm-hmm.
to automate booking, rating, delivery, scanning of proof of deliveries. And all of those, much of the functionality that exists within that software runs on a typical iPhone. So, the smaller carriers don't really have the IT or the money to invest in technology the way that UPS or some of the larger
Right.
regionals do. So they just participate in this network, much as you might on Skype. Skype is a network that connects people. So too, these courier networks are now available to help these little couriers automate their business. So they can, use the camera on their iPhone to capture proof of delivery, which then that picture goes through the network and can be delivered into our kind of platform to the retailer.
Got it. Interesting. So we're talking about all these cool technologies. There's obviously some challenges out there that are still being worked through. I know there was a white paper that your group put together that was really interesting. There was a few points on there. So maybe we can elaborate on those. Like, what are some of the challenges you're seeing out there? Is this the consumer buying habits are so demanding and escalating so quickly? Talk about some of those challenges you're seeing.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, particularly if you're trying to do, global supply, you're trying to manage global supply chains. So a lot of these retailers are global. They have stores all over the world. They have distribution centers,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to bring, goods across borders and inject them into a, last mile network is really not for the faint of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And partially because carriers don't all share the same sort of way that they look at. They have a standard. Parcel carriers track different data than, let's say, freight carriers because parcels are smaller. There's less standardization. So I would say data normalization as you move from one mode to another is something that everyone in the transportation management system business kind of struggles with. We struggle with it. We manage it. That's part of the delivery that we offer, is that we can have one platform no matter what the mode. We'll normalize the data and serve it up in a way that's useful.
Got it.
I think the second one is data, network agnosticism, where we're just describing how there are networks of carriers. I know you work with the 3PL. A lot of retailers or a lot of third-party logistics companies try to differentiate themselves by managing networks that really are part of their brand. Think of Warby Parker. Their whole ship and return process is their brand. And so it runs against the idea that we're trying to normalize data so everybody can ship faster and more effectively. But and yet the carriers and retailers kind of want their own network to differentiate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then others are, cross-border compliance. Obviously, you're aware of the tariff challenges that we're currently faced with. Where the rules change and where we're trying to get a sense of landed cost. What does it cost to bring it across borders and deliver it to the last mile? Data security laws, time zones, regulatory requirements around privacy. These are all challenges, but they get us up in the morning.
Yeah, yeah. Related to the international piece, I always find that interesting. That's kind of the most difficult aspect to grasp, because you're not just dealing with moving something from state to state, but international law, tariffs, and things of that nature. Are you finding that companies are saying, man, this is too complicated, I got other things to focus on, or are people using kind of the international delivery method and really embracing that? I'm not sure if my question makes sense or not, but let me know.
No, it does. I know exactly what you mean. What you're describing, it's the first instance that it's very complicated. It's not for the faint of heart. Depending upon which countries you're shipping to and from, there are cultural differences. There are customs practices that are not well documented. So that's why most companies choose to work with a freight forwarder. So what a freight forwarder does is they become experts in how to move things across border. And increasingly, companies like UPS and FedEx have developed their own freight forwarding operations, where they can pick up first mile in China, bring it through their own freight forwarding operations, get it across the border in a single customs clearance process, and then immediately inject it into a last mile network, including the post office who they partner with, and it shows up at your doorstep. I mean, that's I think the UPS and FedEx model are probably the most successful examples of that.
Right.
They can pick it up in China and deliver it on your doorstep.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Talk about low inventory carrying costs. So, we only have a couple minutes here, as crazy as it sounds, because we've had a good conversation. So maybe hit one or two kind of future trends, if you will, of what you would see this industry doing and growing.
Well, one of the things that we are working on, because we are part of the WiseTech Global Group, is a more generic first mile, cross-border, last mile delivery network.
Okay.
And that would be global, and it would be not only parcels but also heavier freight. And so the idea would be to be able to bring global last mile delivery down to about 5 days.
Wow. So
that's everybody's working hard on that, and I think you'll see more of that over the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. The other one is I mentioned was more local carrier networks, more group-sourced delivery like Deliv. There's more of them every day. Robotic delivery, where self-driving vehicles, drones, and the like would be marshaled to finish the last mile. 3D printing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Seeing a lot more of that within the automotive industry, where they're doing 3D printing of spare parts and so forth, and that may eat into parcel delivery, but that's probably more of a 5-year, 10-year outlook.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of those three, 2 of them are automation related, and 1 of them is technology. So I think we'll just need to empower the local delivery and bring technology to connect everybody together. So I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been very informative, and we certainly will have to get you on again as things continue to evolve. So thank you. I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thanks so much. It was fun.
Absolutely. And I want to thank the audience for joining us today on the Connect and Collaborate Network, featuring supply chain and logistics, the Storytellers. again, brought to you by Cap Logistics. So thanks again, everybody. Take care.